And there are several things that I hope you'll get out of this talk. So after seeing this presentation, you'll understand what we mean by turfgrass. You'll understand the origin and history of lawns. Why do we have lawns? You'll understand that cool season turf grasses need a lot of water in our dry summers here if you want them to stay green. You'll understand that there are viable alternatives to what we normally use for our lawns. And I'll give you resources to learn more about them. And you'll have a sense of the strengths and weaknesses of some of the various alternatives to turfgrass lawns. So what is turfgrass? So if you look it up, look up a definition for turfgrass. Turfgrasses are narrow-leaved grass species that form a uniform, long-lived ground cover that can tolerate foot traffic and low mowing heights. It is, what do we think about when we think about a lawn? It's something you can walk on in your bare feet. It's green all year. We cut it to, heights that doesn't come up above your ankles. It's not up your knees. It's not mounding. It's pretty flat. And I'll give you the bottom line up front. There is no alternative that has all those attributes of cool season turf grasses that we think about when we think about a lawn, unfortunately. We talk a little bit more about grasses. The grass family is huge. It's a large and diverse family of plants. It's the 5th largest family of plants with over 12,000 different species. Covers anywhere between, depending on how you define it, grasslands cover 30 to 50% of the land surface of the earth. They're probably the most cosmopolitan family of plants. Grasslands occur on every continent except for Antarctica. And I have to tell a story. One of my friends, who's an ex-professor at UC San Francisco, retired recently and went down to Antarctica on a bird watching tour. And he was, walking around the beach, this gravel beach, and noticed a bunch of his colleagues, co-tourists were all clustered around something, staring at it. And it turned out it was a sprig of grass. So there is grass in Antarctica. There just aren't grasslands, but they are present on pretty much every continent. This figure here is the family tree, the evolutionary family tree of grasses. Grasses have been on Earth for about over 65 million years. We know that from people who study dinosaur poop. Dinosaur poop has things in it called phytoliths, which are little silica hard mineral parts that occur in grasses. And the shape of those things are characteristic. Scientists have found phytoliths that are very similar to the phytoliths that occur in modern rice. There are 2 sort of subfamilies. There's things that grow in warm seasons, which are these down here, and things that grow in cooler climates. And grasses are very diverse, everything from reeds to sugarcane to switchgrass to corn. The things we think about often as typical grasses like fescues and rye, bluegrass, and a lot of our grains, wheat, barley, oats, and other cereals. And then there are the warm season grasses that we also use for lawns, things like Bermuda grass, buffalo grass, zoysia, as well as edible grains like millet and teff, and things like bamboo and rice. These are all grasses. It's a very diverse family of plants. The 2 that we're going to concentrate on tonight are the cool season grasses that we use for lawns, fescues, rye, bluegrass, and warm season grasses like Bermuda grass and buffalo grasses. So what's the difference between these 2 types of grasses, cool season and warm season grasses? Well, cool season grasses stay green all year if you water them. If they get enough water all year, if you water them in the summer around here. They grow best between temperatures about 60 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. They're not they don't particularly like the heat, the heat of our summers. They have poor to fair heat tolerance. They slow down. Their growth slows down when it's very hot in the summer, and they will go dormant unless you water them. Some examples are fescues, tall and fine fescues that you commonly see in grass seeds around here. Kentucky bluegrass, very water-hungry grass, perennial ryegrasses, and bent grasses. In contrast, warm season grasses, as the name implies, flourish in the summer. They go dormant in the winter when the temperatures get below about 50 degrees. They like it above 75 degrees Fahrenheit, so they're heat tolerant. They're also relatively drought tolerant, and they're pretty tough. They withstand heavy use. Examples of warm season grasses are Bermuda grass, St. Augustine grass, zoysia, and buffalo grass. In our area, most of the lawns are composed of cool season turf grasses. This is a little map of the United States, as you might expect. The warm season grasses are adapted best to our, the warmer parts of the country, the subtropical parts of the country. And in between the cool season and the warm season zones, there's a transition zone where you find both types of grasses. But turf grass actually occupies over 2% of the land in the US. That's 3 times more than any other irrigated crop. It's over 50 million acres. But turf grass lawns are expensive. We spent over $100 billion on lawn care in the US in 2020. That's twice the total US foreign aid budget for in 2021. That's before we started sending money to Ukraine. They're time consuming. Typical US homeowner spends 75 to 150 hours maintaining the lawn every year. But compare that, most of us only get 80 hours of paid time off work. And they're actually relatively hazardous. 80,000 Americans are injured every year using lawnmowers. That's comparable to the number of annual firearms injuries. 10,000 of those injuries involve children. 30% result in an amputation. Hang on a second. I've got to turn off the call that's coming in. Sorry. So why in the world do we do this? Why do we spend this money, spend this time, and risk our fingers? Well, to answer that question, you have to go back 1,000 years to the Middle Ages, when feudal landowners in Northern Europe cleared the forests around their forts and castles, and this was primarily for defense, so that people couldn't hide in the woods and sneak up on the castle and shoot arrows or batter down the front gates. They cleared them so you had a defensible space around the castles. The word lawn actually comes from an archaic English word called a laund, which is an open space in the woods, like a glade or a pasture. So these cleared spaces around the castles were initially used to graze livestock. They kept the grasses and the other herbs, the herbaceous plants that grew there down and mowed down. But these spaces transitioned to recreational use, things like quoits and horseshoes and lawn billiards, which evolved into croquet, lawn bowling, picnicking. And it wasn't very pleasant to do that if there was a lot of animal poop in the lawns. So maintaining these areas switched over to actually using human labor, some men with scythes, which took a huge workforce. Because of that, it actually became a sign of the wealth and power of the landowner. By the 17th century, these vast green spaces were incorporated into palatial landscapes, and there were ostentatious displays of the wealth and status of the owners of these palaces. By the archetypal example are the tapis vert around the Palace of Versailles, the green carpets around the Palace of Versailles. By the 18th century, prominent and wealthy Americans had started to emulate the Europeans. People like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington had landscapes at Monticello and Mount Vernon designed to look like those of English country estates with broad, carpets of lawn around their buildings. More generally, the concept of green spaces was imported to Europe in the 19th century by landscape architects, notably Frederick Law Olmsted, who designed many parks, dozens of parks around the United States, including Central Park in New York and Washington Park in Chicago, as well as estates of the wealthy. He also designed one of America's first planned suburban developments outside of Chicago. This is Riverside in 1868. Riverside was unique and unusual in that the houses were set back 30 feet from the street. And unlike homes in England, which are often separated by walls, There were no walls. So the riverside had this carpet of green with houses set among it. So giving the impression that you're living in a park. So that you don't have to be a millionaire or billionaire to live in a park. Also around this time, things that helped develop the adoption of lawns was the availability of mechanical lawnmowers at the end of the 19th century. By the early 20th century, the commercial lawn industry had actually developed with commercial seeds, fertilizers, and guides on how to take care of your lawn. And around that time in the United States, golf became a popular recreational activity. So again, having large areas of green open space. In the post-war era, post-World War II era, people had more general availability of cars, and that led to a suburban sprawl. So as people moved from the cities to the suburbs, lawns became a fixture in the U.S. landscape. Just as in Riverside, the suburban tract homes were set back from the roads, not fronting right on the roads, typically didn't have walls separating them, and gave the impression that you too can live in a home surrounded by a flat green space, like a park, just like the wealthy people do. The archetypal suburban development was Levittown in the late 50s. The houses came with instructions on how to maintain your lawn, and you had to maintain your lawn. And around this time, motorized lawnmowers were developed, and that made maintenance easier. So that's fine if you live on the East Coast or in Northern Europe, where it rains all the time, but it's not so great for our area in our Mediterranean climate, where we have a dry summer. So what I plotted here are the water needs versus the actual precipitation for two places, London, England, and Concord, California. So the water needs expressed in terms of inches of precipitation are the blue bars as a function of time. These are the months of the year along the bottom. And what the plants need, what a turfgrass needs, we'll see some turfgrass needs in terms of irrigation, in terms of inches of water, are shown in the green bars. So obviously, the water needs go up in the summer, and it's actively growing, and it's less in the winter. Here in London, you can see that it rains all year. If you've ever been to London, it's a rainy place, and by and large, the cumulative deficit in terms of, if I add up all the water that the grass needs and compare that with how much precipitation the grass sees, there's only about 2 inches of deficit, which is within the noise, really. A little bit of irrigation in London is enough to give you a very healthy lawn. But compare that with Concord, where two things to note is, one is it doesn't rain in the summer, as most of us know, and two, the grasses here actually need more water. Grasses here need 6 inches of water, peaking at 6 inches of water in a month. Whereas in London, they need much less. That's because it's hotter and more arid here. Plants evapotranspire more here. But just at the peak of their water needs, we don't get any rain in July and August. So by the end of the year, the water year, there's a cumulative irrigation deficit of about 30 inches of water. Just for interesting fact, the average total rainfall in Concord in the year is about 17 inches. So what does this mean? So for my fairly modest backyard, which is 1,350 square feet, if you do the calculations, that needs almost 25,000 gallons of water for the summer months if I irrigate from April to October. That's just not, these grasses are not native to here. They're not adapted to here. You can keep them green, but you are going to pay for it. If you go to visit Italy or Greece or Spain or other Mediterranean countries, you don't see lawns. Lawns are not common. They're not part of the landscape aesthetic there. But, there are benefits to having lawns and lawn-like spaces, these flat green areas. Obviously, they provide a nice soft space for kids and adults to play games, play with your pets, to play sports on. You want to roll around on something. Lawns are a nice thing to roll around on. Green is known to be a psychologically soothing color, but it's calming. It reminds us of nature, and being able to see that outside your house is a nice thing. Lawns reduce runoff. They reduce the urban heat effect. They cover the soil. They sustain the soil's biological community, which is important. And some of us have to comply with homeowners association requirements. They may require you to have things that look like lawns or lawn-like spaces. Although most homeowners associations these days are a little, given the drought situations we've had, are a little more lenient these days. One thing people think of if they want to replace their water-thirsty lawn is hardscaping and artificial turf. The problem with these is they can get extremely hot. Hardscaping like concrete or stones and artificial turf are typically 30 to 60 degrees hotter than the air. You can burn yourself. There are numerous studies. I tried to look at what the highest temperature was, and the highest temperature I could find was a published study in Provo, Utah, that the turfgrass, not turfgrass, the artificial turf reached a temperature of 200 degrees Fahrenheit on a 98-degree day. 200 degrees Fahrenheit is almost enough to boil water, and it's certainly enough to give you burns, severe burns if you walked on it. I know that there are schools that have installed artificial turf in an attempt to save water, but they found that they have to water them to keep them cool enough to play on. And you have to water them a lot. If you water them just a little for 20 minutes, and then it'll get the temperature down, but within another 20 minutes, it's back up to burning temperatures. Artificial turf is expensive to install. Artificial turf is a petroleum-based product, so that has environmental impacts. They're actually not weed-free over time. Dust and dirt blows in, and you can actually get things germinating in the artificial turf. They don't support the soil's biological community. In fact, they kill it. They heat the subsurface soil, and you can actually damage adjacent plants if you put your artificial turf too close to things like shrubbery and trees. You'll heat up the soil and impede water infiltration into the soil, and eventually they wear out, and they're going to end up in a landfill. So we are not enthusiasts for artificial turf. So as I said at the beginning, there is no perfect alternative that replicates all of the attributes, the desirable attributes of a cool season turfgrass lawn. But there are many, so there's going to be trade-offs, and there's many things that you can trade off, and what's important to you will determine what sort of alternative you end up with. So drought is obviously one thing. How much water does the alternative use? But other things are, can you walk on it? Can you walk on it in your bare feet, or do you have to wear sneakers? Is it pet friendly? Is it invasive? Does it match your environmental conditions? Do you have a shady lawn or a sunny lawn? How much maintenance do you want to perform on it? Do you want to mow it every week, or do you not want to mow it every, more than once or twice a summer, growing season? How much do you have to spend on fertilizer to keep it green and good looking? How long lived is it? You have to sustain it, replant it at intervals. So there's many potential factors you have to consider when selecting an alternative to a turfgrass. And there are many potential turfgrass alternatives. How do we judge these? These are things that are in the handout that you'll have access to at the end, and I'll go talk about them in more detail in a few moments. But so to winnow this down, I've used 6 criteria, which are admittedly somewhat subjective, but they're sort of the things that we think of when we think about a lawn, and that is, can you walk on it? How tolerant is it to foot traffic? Can you play on it? How much water does it require? And that's obviously important these days in California. What's its environmental tolerance? And by that, this is sort of a catch-all. That means, is it frost tender? Is it heat resistant? Is it resistant to diseases, or is it prone to getting diseases like a fungal infection? Is it tolerant of shade? How much light does it need? Things like that. Does it need perfect soil? It will grow in our clayey soils that we commonly have here in Contra Costa. How does it look year round? Is it green all year? Does it go dormant in the winter? Does it go yellow in the winter? Does it patchy bald spots in the winter? And does it burn out in the summer? How much what are its maintenance requirements? How much mowing, fertilization, replacement is required? And another catch-all, is it environmentally friendly? Is it a California native? Does it attract pollinators? Does it fix nitrogen in the soil? And so things like this. So I've assessed all of those many alternatives across the top, listed across the top, with the first column being cool season turf grasses for comparison. And then given a grade, stoplight chart grade, if it's green, then it means it's pretty good. If it's yellow, it means maybe. And if it's red, that means it's kind of deficient in that area. So for instance, a cool season turf grass takes foot traffic, but it needs a lot of water, so it's red. It needs a lot of maintenance, so it's red. It looks good year round if you give it enough water. It's reasonably tolerant of various environmental conditions. It's not invasive, but it's not native to California. It's not pollinator friendly. So I've done that for all of these alternatives, and tonight I will not have time to talk about all of these things. But I'm going to talk about the ones that are highlighted in blue. So it's about 5 or 6 of these. The first alternative I'll talk about is UC Verde buffalo grass. This is a hybrid grass that's been developed by UC Davis and UC Riverside specifically for the climate here in California and Arizona. It's developed from a native prairie grass, a buffalo grass, but it has a finer texture and it stays green longer throughout the year than the native buffalo grass, the wild type buffalo grass does. It's nearly seedless, so it doesn't produce much pollen, so it's good for people with allergies. Its main drawback is it yellows in the winter. It is a warm season grass that goes dormant in the winter. And you can see here, this is a building at UC Davis. In the summer, nice green lawn. In the winter, it goes this golden color. Its water needs are about 25% of that of a traditional lawn, so it's pretty water efficient. UC Davis has also done studies of looking at how much water, how little water can you put on it to still get a good looking turf. And the link to those studies is actually in the handout that you'll get at the end of the talk. It grows in full sun to partial shade. It won't grow in full shade. It grows rather slowly, so you don't have to mow it very often. If you don't mow it, it'll grow about 6 inches high. But if you want it to look like a normal lawn, you can mow it once or twice a month, every 2 to 3 weeks probably, for a more traditional lawn look. You can use it just like a traditional lawn. It tolerates medium to heavy foot traffic. But as I said, it goes winter dormant. It goes brown in December and starts to green up in late February or early March. You would install this if you want to replace your lawns in plugs. These are little things you put in as plant them in little holes on about a 9 or 12 inch spacing, and it takes about 3 months to establish. And you want to do that in the summer or late spring because it is a warm season turfgrass, so it's most active in the summer. It's widely available now, even though it's a relatively new plant. Another alternative is Carapia. It was developed in Japan. It's actually a patented plant. It's developed by researchers in Japan for growing in drought conditions. It's quite tolerant of different soils and ranges of temperatures. It grows quite quickly to establish a dense ground cover, but it's sterile, so it doesn't reseed itself. You don't get unwanted seeding elsewhere in your garden. It's not invasive. It has pink or white blossoms, which attract bees, which could be a good thing if you want to attract pollinators, but perhaps not such a good thing if you want to walk around on your bare feet. It is also a fairly low water use plant, about 25 to 50% of the water needs of a traditional lawn. It needs full sun, and it'll grow to 1 to 3 inches tall if you don't mow it. But you can mow it once or twice a month to reduce the number of flowers, and that will reduce the number of bees. It is not like a regular turf grass. It'll only tolerate light to medium foot traffic. Again, if the flowers are mowed, you won't have the bee problem. It is it's sensitive to temperature. It's frost sensitive. It goes semi-dormant. It develops patchy brown areas in the winter if the temperatures go below 45 degrees C. And the surface grass, the surface expression, the leaves will die back at temperatures below about 38 Fahrenheit. But it will regrow again in the spring from the roots. It doesn't kill the roots at those temperatures. Again, it's a warm season plant, so we want to install it in the spring to early fall, and it's available either as sod or as plugs. And it takes 3 to 4 months to establish itself. Another alternative is white clover, specifically microclover. Microclover, unlike ordinary white clover, which white clover will get about 8 inches high, microclover grows much lower, and it doesn't flower as much, so therefore it doesn't attract as many bees. A great aspect of clover is that it fixes nitrogen. Nitrogen is one of the essential plant nutrients that we typically have to add to our lawns in the form of fertilizer. It produces its own bioavailable nitrate by using bacteria on its roots. It competes with most weeds, and it tends to discourage other pest plants. It's good between stepping stones or as a fill-in, or you can use it in a mixed crop, mix it with your grasses. This is something my father tried to eradicate from his lawn when I was a kid. He would pull his hair out when he saw clover, but in fact, clover is a good alternative to the grasses that he was growing back east. It tolerates compacted soils. It tolerates pet urine. It doesn't yellow in response to pet urine, but it can be somewhat invasive. Microclover, I want to talk a little bit more about. Microclover doesn't grow as high. It tolerates sun to partial shade. It does need water, but about half as much as a traditional lawn. Microclover will grow about 6 inches tall as opposed to 8 inches for regular clover. And you can mow it once or twice a month to reduce the number of flowers and encourage a denser growth. Tolerates pretty heavy foot traffic if you mow it to get rid of the flowers. It goes winter dormant, and some of the cultivars, some varieties are frost sensitive, but around here, I don't think that's going to be a problem. We don't get the hard frosts that they get in the more northern parts of the US. Installing it in the spring or fall is best, and you plant from seed. It takes about a month, plus or minus a couple of weeks, for it to establish. Drawback is microclover seed is less readily available and it's more expensive than regular clover, but it is available. Another nice alternative that I just saw in my neighborhood yesterday walking around is silver carpet, also called rockadidi. It grows in full sun to part shade, but it needs only about 25% of the water of a traditional lawn. Tolerates light to medium foot traffic. It tends to do better in coastal areas, but I'm here in San Ramon and one of my neighbors has this, and it's doing fine. And we get up to over 100 degrees in the summer, days at a time. It is frost sensitive. It will die back at temperatures below 28. Which is pretty cold for our area. A drawback is it needs to have very good drainage in the soil. Otherwise, it's subject to fungal issues in poorly drained clay soils. You can install it year round. It's sold in flats in nurseries. It's widely available. You don't need to mow it, and it has these nice little yellow daisy-like flowers in the summer. If you want to get rid of the flowers, you can mow those off. And it produces this lovely silvery green carpet, hence the name silver carpet. Another alternative are native fescues. Fescues, of course, are grass. The specific ones that are native to California. They don't tolerate shade too much. They want full sun, so about 50% shade. Depending on the variety of the species that you get, they could have very low to moderate water needs. They grow tall. If you don't mow them, you end up with a meadow-like look. But you can cut them back to about 4 to 5 inches, 4 to 6 inches, which is still pretty high, but it does look more like a traditional lawn. Tolerates medium to light foot traffic, but they are mounding grasses. They tend to form these hummocks, so it's not something you want to play ball on, because they're sort of lumpy lawns that you would walk on, but they're very pretty. You can install them year round, but late winter and early spring would be ideal as either sod or plugs, and these are pretty widely available. And there are many other alternatives. Dwarf carpet of stars is a succulent, so it doesn't have very good foot. You can't walk on it very well if you crush it. And the other drawback with this is that it tends to get woody and over time, so it's not pleasant to walk on. It gets bare spots, so you have to replant it fairly often. But it's extremely drought tolerant and very attractive. Herbaceous plants like oregano or creeping thyme are lovely. They have a fragrance when you walk on them. They do have flowers, so they will attract bees, so that's an issue. Yarrow is another low-growing yarrow, low water use. Carpet bugle, Juga reptans, produces these lovely purple flowers, purple blue flowers, which can be mowed off if you want it to stay low. Native bent grasses for sort of a meadow-like look. Foreskin mint, low-growing mint, snow in summer, native sedges, mondo grass, which is a very shade tolerant but somewhat invasive grass, tends again a mounding grass, chamomiles. So there's many alternatives, and you don't have to pick just one. You can consider mixing several different of these alternatives in sort of a tapestry lawn. We know that monocultures aren't natural. Real ecosystems involve a variety of plant species that support different functions in the ecosystem. So, why not do that with your lawn alternative? For instance, you could mix clover, nitrogen-fixing clover, with a grass like UC verde, or you could mix it with herbaceous plants like thyme and rosemary and yarrow to provide needed nitrogen in companion plants. And by using a mixed culture, you might actually be able to design a landscape that maintains its appearance and visual interests, across all 4 seasons. You have different things flowering at different times in the year. You do, however, need to pick plants with similar cultural needs and growth rates. Otherwise, one plant will overtake the others. Well, how much does this cost? How much does it cost? Well, alternatives that you install as plugs or plants or sod generally cost anywhere from $50 to $400 per 100 square feet of lawn area. And an estimate that I got for the standard turfgrass sod that we use, that's about $150 per 100 square feet. So they could be cheaper, they could be more expensive, but they're the same order of magnitude, at least in terms of cost. But alternatives that you plant from seed, like clovers or Bermuda grass or bent grass, they cost $2 to $4 per 100 square foot of lawn area for the seed. And grass seed mixes are typically about $3 a square foot, so very comparable in cost for the seeds. The microclover is at the higher end of that range. It might be more like $5 or more per 100 square feet of lawn. But note, these are just the costs for the plants themselves, or the seeds, and the cost of site preparation, removing your lawn, amending your soil, reinstalling your irrigation. That's going to add to the total cost and be comparable or more than the actual cost of the plants alone. Labor and labor is expensive. But to help you with that, both of our water districts here in Contra Costa County, Contra Costa Water District and East Bay Mud, offer rebates for reducing your water-thirsty turfgrass with alternatives. East Bay Mud has 2 different lawn conversion rebates. One is $1.25 a square foot. If you remove your lawn, choose all low water use plants, and remove your sprinklers and convert to a drip irrigation or hand water, and add 3 inches of mulch. If you want to get the super rebate of $2.50 a square foot, you have to sheet mulch to reduce your lawn. The master gardeners have good videos and literature on how to sheet mulch your lawn. You have to add compost to replenish the soil. You have to choose a majority of California native plants, and you have to plant in the cool season from September through February when it's raining, so the plants get established. East Bay Mud also has a landscape design assistance program. You can get $200 rebate for a 2-hour consultation with the landscape designer. They have to be a landscape designer on one of their lists, however, to get that. And another thing, which is not really plant related, but East Bay Mud will pay for half the cost of a flow meter to monitor your water use, which is very useful for detecting leaks. You can either install these at the water meter, which is very easy. It just straps onto your existing water meter, and you have a little device in your house that talks to the flow meter, or you can install it at the point of entry of your pipe, your water main into your house, and that typically requires a plumber. You should check with your homeowner's insurance to see if they also offer rebates for flow meters. My homeowner's insurance company did. They paid for half the cost, and East Bay Mud paid for half the cost. So my flow meter was essentially free. And it was actually useful because we went away 3 weeks ago. Our neighbors had somebody come in and repair a fence. They came into my yard, used my spigot to mix up their concrete, and they didn't shut the spigot all the way. So it was dripping about a gallon a minute. And I got an alert on my phone saying, "Hey, you got a leak at your home." So I was able to call my neighbor. They came over and turned off the faucet, and it was wonderful. Insurance companies like these because if that happens in your house, you can detect a leak and not have the terrible flood damage in your house, or minimize the flood damage that you might have in your house. Sorry, that was a digression. But Contra Costa Water District also has a rebate, a lawn to garden rebate of $1 a square foot. They're a little bit cheaper in terms of their generosity. Note that both Contra Costa and East Bay Mud limit single family rebates to $2,000, no matter what you do. And Contra Costa Water District also has a landscape design assistance program, a $200 rebate, for a 2-hour consultation with one of their approved landscape designers. But Contra Costa Water District will pay you twice. You can get the consultation for your front yard and for your backyard for a total of $400. So going to the end here. So what I hope you got out of this is I hope you now know what a turfgrass is, why we have turfgrass lawns, where they came from, that we need a lot of water in Contra Costa County or the Bay Area in general if you want your lawn to stay green during our dry summer, that there are a number of viable alternatives to turfgrass lawns, and when you get the handout, you will get many resources to learn more about them. And you've heard something about the strengths and weaknesses of the various alternatives. This is just a few of the resources that are listed in your handout. There are more there, many more on the handout.